Dishitharine. Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadara, Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hari Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hari Hari. Hari Rama, Rama Rama, Hari Hari. Hari Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hari Hari. Hari Rama, Rama Rama, Hari Hari. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Haya Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, Gurudev, Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Gurudev.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much for doing the kirtans of Lucky and Rosalind. They sound just like the cello when you play the cello. It's very nice, very nice. So thank you all.
Thank you for the compliment. Hare Krishna, Gurudev. So pleased to see you. Please accept my humble obeisances.
Hare Krishna.
All glory for Srila Prabhupada.
Yes, always.
So yeah, I just wanted to say hello and thank you again for being here, and I'll go ahead and just pass it over.
Very good. Then we arrive to the video conference number 31. And we arrived to the fourth chapter of the first canto, the Srimad Bhagavatam. So, first of all, we are going to offer our humble obeisances to our spiritual masters and our deities. Narayana namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam mudirayet. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Narayana, unto Narayana Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta praye svabhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke patir bhavati naistiki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troubles unto the heart is almost completely destroyed. A loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nitinam. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharyane Nirvishesha Shunyavati Paschatya Deshatari. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So today we are going to start from the verse 17 and 18 of the fourth chapter of the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. We are going to read the verse, at least the first one, or when we find extraordinarily important verses. All the verses are important, but there are some of them who are particularly important, or maybe the adjective of important is not the right one. Let's say the most known, the most used by the devotees, the most studied, the most meditated upon. There are certain verses who everybody knows by memory, and I invite you also to do the same with our memory, because as long as you have some memory, not like me, you need to use them, because people like to know that you are not saying what you think, but what the Shastra say, or what the Guru says, or what some very important authority say. So it is very important to know some Sanskrit verses. So 1, 4, 17 and 18, I'm going to read it in English also, and after Bhatta Andy can continue reading the verses. Bhautikānam ca bhavanam shaktirasam ca tat kritam ashraddadhanam nishattvan durmedam rasitayushaha durbhagam janan viksha munir divena chakshusha sarva varnashramanam shastra sarva varnashramanam yad tadhyahi tamamogadrik. The great sage was fully equipped in knowledge, could see through his transcendental vision the deterioration everything material due to the influence of the age. He could also see that the faithless people in general would be reduced in duration of life. It would be impatient due to lack of goodness. Thus, he contemplated for the welfare of men in statuses and orders of life. Normally, everything material deteriorates. That's the nature of matter. Deteriorates every day. So much so that there are different pralayas. You can find it, the different types of pralayas. I don't remember what book I published that. Most probably you will find it in our library. That there are different kinds of pralaya. Pralaya means devastation, destruction. One is called nitya pralaya. Nitya pralaya means something that happens every moment. Every moment is a pralaya. We become older, we become sicker, we become more impatient, we become less powerful in our meditation, etc., etc. So it's a struggle. Being in the material world is a struggle. Just like if you want to go up river, you have to swim. If you want to go down river, you don't need to swim. You just let go. You know? So if you want to advance in spiritual life, you have to struggle. And if you want to go back to Maya, you just let it go and you will go back to Maya. So Vyasadeva could see not only the obvious thing that everything deteriorates, but it was going to happen a special deterioration in qualities due to the beginning of Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga is a very bad age. People are really low class. And he could see that. And so here in this verse, there are two things mentioned. One, the reduction of duration of life. People lives not much. An old man, 80 years old is an old man. In the past, people used to live 1,000 years. And then will be impatient. Impatient means you cannot stay still to listen. You just, you try to find any excuse for not coming to the Bhagavatam class because you are impatient. You have got to do things you have to do. I cannot stay 1 or 2 hours listening to this man. And this is bad. And because yoga, when you think to yoga, you think to yogis going up on the mountain Himalaya, staying there for years, for decades, just meditating on one thing without moving, moving physically and moving mentally. So then yoga is not for us. That's why all the great acharyas, they don't recommend doing yoga, the real yoga, not the gymnastic, footing. That's nothing. If you go running in the park, they will be more or less the same thing. But the real yoga, the one who was taught originally by the great sage Patanjali, that's very difficult for us because we are impatient. So Vyasadeva thought, how I'm going to benefit these people? I want to help them. So how to do? So now let's go to the verse number 19, but Andy, please can read.
Oops, sorry. He saw that the sacrifices mentioned in the Vedas were means by which the people's occupations could be purified. And to simplify the process, he divided the one Veda into 4 in order to expand them among men.
Yes, Srila Prabhupada says here that the original Veda is what we know as a Yajur Veda. And then he saw that it was too concise. When persons are expert in philosophy, they don't need much words. So much so that if you talk to any Gaudiya Mata or any other movement, they told me, some of them, they talking privately, they said, how can you talk about nothing for 1 hour, 2 hours? A little verse, a short verse like this, you can talk 1 hour about one verse. Well, I mean, what is that? We don't do that. I stayed in Gaudiya Mat a few times, and I saw that they just sit down and they read. And sometimes they say something, but only us, only in ISKCON, in our movement, we give class and talking 10 minutes about one word. Of course, this is not unique. The great sages, they wrote books about one word. But normally, being concise, one can be concise when the other person is expert. You don't need to say much about the word, I don't know, Atma, or the word Jiva, or the word Karma, or the word Vishnu, because everybody knows what Atma is. But if you don't know, or if the speaker thinks that you don't know, he feels a duty to explain it. And one word, one Sanskrit word, is a concept. Sometimes one word is a book. Okay, so the Vyasadeva saw that the Yajur Veda was just too little, was just too concise. And he said, no, you have to say more so that people will be able to understand more. And everywhere it goes, the way Srila Prabhupada told us to give classes, to talk, And and we do it, we talk a lot. And so he divided the one Veda in four Vedas. And you know what the 4 Vedas are: the Yajur Veda, the Rig Veda, the Sama Veda, the Atharva Veda. If you want to know what each Veda deals. If you want to know how many verses and how many Upanishad are part, then you have to enter into our library. If you don't, you will never know, because this is large. It will take me, maybe one day, okay, I can talk about the four Vedas, but basically all these things I described into writing in several articles, and more will come. If you send me one question, not just during the video, direct live video, but during the week, then I have time to elaborate a little more. Okay, so Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Samaveda, Atharva Veda, each of them, they deals with something, So then the verse number 20.
The four divisions of the original sources of knowledge, the Vedas, were made separately, but the historical facts and authentic stories mentioned in the Puranas are called the fifth Veda.
The original Yajur Veda was divided into four, and each of them was divided into four. Then, but all the histories, the history is not treated in the Vedas. There is something, but very, very little. And then Vyasadeva said, "No, the history, I'm going to write books on history." And these books are called the Puranas. And among the Purana, there are two which are extraordinarily important. They are called the Itihasas. You know what the two Itihasas are? You have them in your home, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. These two are the Itihasa. And then there are the Purana. How many there are the Purana? Many. The main Puranas, which are called the Mahapurana. The Mahapuranas are 18. And then there are other Puranas called Upapurana or Lagu Purana, which are hundreds. And in the Puranas, we have all histories. So there is one devotee, an Italian devotee, just wrote me a few days ago. He said, I read the Mahabharata, and since that day one of the Bhishma Parva, I lived my days in sadness. So the Mahabharata made me sad. So I want to understand why I felt sad reading the Mahabharata. So tomorrow in the Italian video conference, I will explain why. I will tell something now. First of all, the histories, they are pastimes of very elevated personalities. But these personalities are in the material world. And the reason for these stories to be happened, is that they want to teach us something. And there is nothing to laugh in this material world. This material world is sadness from the beginning to the end. Only someone who is very foolish can find something to laugh about. So this devotee found part of the Mahabharata sad, because it is sad. There are millions of people dying there, but everybody dies in this material world. It's not 6,400,000 people died in the Mahabharata only. There are billions and trillions and quadrillions of people who took birth and died during the thousands of years. So if death makes you sad, then I think you will pass your life crying, because everybody is going to die. Not only death, but also all the sad behaviors that we read in the Mahabharata and in the Ramayana. In the Ramayana by Ravana, in the Mahabharata by Duryodhana. These two people are a personal example of everything a bad man is. But how many bad men there are in this world? So we can understand how a bad men are and how to deal with them. So the Mahabharata and the Ramayana are not two comic books, are books of philosophy that you learn about this material world. Just like the Vedas deals with this material world, the Vedas do not deal with the spiritual world, or I should say three-fourths of the Vedas do not deal with this with the spiritual world. The fourth of each Veda deal with the spiritual world, but in personal spiritual world, which is with the Brahmajyoti, the Brahman, what they call mainly the Brahman. Most of the Upanishad are about Brahman and not Brahma. So some Upanishad they do, like the Shisha Upanishad we have, the Isha Upanishad, that we know better than Shisha Upanishad, the Katha Upanishad, the Chandogya Upanishad, the Katha Upanishad. There are a few Upanishads who are very clear on that point, just like in the Isha Upanishad, there is a verse where the devotee is talking, says, remove your curtain of light and show me your face. And the Sanskrit word is mukha. Mukha is face. There is no other translation for mukha. So it's a very clear that there is a person behind the curtain of transcendental light. So we had the four Vedas, divided each of them in four, and then we have the Puranas and the Itihasas, which are the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, telling stories. Stories are instructive stories for us to learn. And since in Kali Yuga we are not very Brahminical and we are not very attracted to the Vedas, because the Vedas, you got to be Brahminical to like the Vedas, otherwise you get bored. After 20 pages, you just want to close the book. And because it's very abstract. You know, there is not a story, there is a word that you have to understand. So the Vedas are for Brahmanas and not for, in general, for people in Kali Yuga. That's why Krishna in Bhagavad Gita says to Arjuna, don't be attracted to the flowery words of the Vedas, because the Vedas are not for us. The Vedas are for the Vedic Brahmanas. And Krishna says, no, you have to follow the Puranas and the Itihasas. So this is something I wanted to say about the Vedas and the Puranas. Okay, please go on, verse number 22.
I think it was 21.
21.
I don't remember
Right.
reading 21.
Right, 21.
Okay. Okay. After the Vedas were divided into 4 divisions, Paila Rishi became the professor of Rig Veda, Jaimini the professor of the Samaveda, and Vaishampayana alone became glorified by the Yajur Veda.
This is not verse number 21. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. You are right. Yes, no, you're right. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, let me put everything together. All right. Okay. See the strategy. Vyasadeva thought there is nobody who can know all these things. Just one person. So better I have 4 Vedas and I give 1 Veda to one of my disciples in such a way that they will become the highest authority in that specific Vedas. And then Paila Rishi became the professor of the Rig Veda, Jaimini, the professor of the Samaveda, Vaishampayana, about the Yajur Veda, and we'll see the Tangira Muni in the next verse was entrusted with the Atharva Veda. Can you read the next? You know Queen's Cat? Okay.
Yes.
You know him. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Srimad Bhagavatam 22.
Okay. The Sumantu Muni Angira, who was very devotedly engaged, was entrusted with the Atharva Veda, and my father Romaharshana was entrusted with the Puranas and historical records.
I told the story of Romaharshana a few times. Romaharshana, the four Vedas were given to Brahmanas by family. We will say pure blood, we will say, okay? Each of them, the Pailarishi and Jaimini and Angira, they were all pure Brahmanas, Vaishampayana, while Romaharshana Sutta had a mixed birth of Brahmana and the Shudrani. So that's why it was called Romaharshana Sutta. Sutta is the union between two different classes. Now, today, when we think to classes, we immediately become scandalized. Oh, what is this? Well, because in Kali Yuga, there is no such a thing of correspondence of family qualities. You can be a very intelligent man and be being born in a very foolish family, or vice versa. While during the very time, if one had taken birth in a family, was because he had the same potential qualities of his father and mother. That's why in other ages, like Dvapara, Treta, in Satya Yuga, someone was accepted as a Brahmana if he was born in a Brahminical family, but not in Kali Yuga. In Kali Yuga, everything is mixed. Everything is just, you never know who the person is. So Romaharshana was born by two different classes, so he could not be accepted, and his shortcomings became very clear. Was rightly so not accepted because he could not recognize Balarama as a supreme personality of Godhead, and so he was killed. He was killed by Balarama because Balarama saw this person was seated in the Vyasasana, and he was seated in Vyasasana and said, well, I'm the Guru. He has to bow down, and I may not be a pure Brahmana, but I'm still a Brahmana. And he is a Kshatriya. Actually, was not even a Kshatriya. He was a mixed Kshatriya and Vaishya because he was born by Vasudeva, and then he was brought up by a Vaishya like Nanda Maharaj. So then I am superior to him. He has to bow down. But Balarama was not a Kshatriya Vaishya or anything like that. He was a supreme person. He could not recognize Balarama. So Balarama thought he's not qualified to be the Guru. So he killed him. And after, I'm sure you remember the story, I told the story in much details, that his son, whose name was Ugrashrava, or Sauti, because he was the son of a Sutta, who we know as Sutta Goswami, he was blessed by Balarama to become one of the greatest. Although he was not born in a pure family, by the mercy of Balarama, he became one of the most important spiritual masters of our history. That's Sutta Goswami. We have the Mahabharata and the Srimad Bhagavatam, thanks to Sutta Goswami. So this is a very important lesson, that it doesn't matter your birth, doesn't matter anything material. If you are blessed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, if you are blessed by Guru, then you become qualified. Just like in India, when Srila Prabhupada came to the West, he transformed us. We were not much more than just bums in the street, especially in the 60s. You know, most of us actually, they were actual bums living in the streets with the long hairs and the guitar, etc. You know, free love and free drugs and free everything, etc. He transformed these people into worth Vaishnavas. He made them initiated. He made them into Brahmanas. But in India, they could not accept that. Not all of them. Some accepted. Some did not accept. Why? Because in previous ages, it was not possible. If you were born in a class, you stayed in the class forever. If you are born in a Shudra family or a Vaishya family, you had to take a birth. You had to die and take another birth to take birth in a Brahmana. Otherwise, you never, even today, these things are going on. Because they don't know the story of Balarama, who by his blessing, the Sutta, non-pure Brahmanas became one of the most important gurus. And even today, this debate between math or movement, spiritual organization, they go on. And I remember passing through, there were a group of very young sannyasis, you know, discussing, and they were saying, like, you know, Westerners, they had to, but Westerners who are Vaishnava, next life, they will take birth in India, and then they will be actual Vaishnavas. Until then, they are not Vaishnavas. And I was there, you know, I was kind of little more senior than them physically, you know, and even spiritually, since I was initiated even before they were born. But so they were kind of listening to me a little bit. You know? And I said, oh, I didn't know that to go back to Krishna Loka, you need an Indian passport, you know. So they look at me, kind of, they never heard of such a thing, you know, that you don't go back to Krishna because you have one passport or the other. You go to Krishna only in one way, by the mercy of the spiritual master. Period. There is no other way. You can be born by, you never go back. If you don't have the mercy of a pure devotee of the Lord, you don't go. So Srila Prabhupada made us dignified Vaishnavas, and by his mercy, we are here talking about Srimad Bhagavatam. This is a Brahminical activity, talking about the Srimad Bhagavatam, not, you know, a barbarian European, you know. A Brahmana should talk about Bhagavatam. But still, by the mercy of the spiritual master, yes, we can do that. So Ramaharshana was entrusted with the Puranas and historical records because he was not a pure Brahmana by birth. And at that time, he counted. Today he won't, but at that time he counted. And rightly so. Vyasadeva said, no, you cannot teach the Vedas. Otherwise, what the people will say, you know, Vyasadeva had the power to entrust anybody, to make anybody qualified to talk about the Vedas. But he didn't do that because you don't, you follow the rules. Although you are qualified to break the rules, you don't do that. Because if you do that, then people will say, okay, so Vyasadeva did it, and maybe I can do it, and maybe the other. And then the very serious problem of imitation. That's why Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, I don't have to do anything, but if I don't do, then people will go to hell because they will know, they will follow my example. So that's why the rule breaking is very rare in our history. Otherwise, the rules should be followed. And that's why Ramaharshana was entrusted with a Purana, an historic record like the Ramayana, and although Ramayana and the Mahabharata. Okay? Okay, let's go on to verse number 23.
All these learned scholars, in their turn, rendered their entrusted Vedas unto their many disciples, grand disciples, and great grand disciples, and thus the respective branches of the followers of the Vedas came into being.
You had to learn. You had to read one article that I wrote, and how many different branches of knowledge came from the original Vedas. There is the Upaveda, there are the Brahmanas, and there are Aranyakas, and there is this, and there are so many different, different kinds of branches. Of course, all the studies, there is one devotee that regularly comes out and say, Mama, I don't understand these things. What can I do? You know, you don't need to understand, but you need to know that there are these things. You know, at least you should know that you are not in a movement with the Hare Krishna. You know, that they just a movement of dancers and singers and dancers. You know, so we represent a large, very old tradition and of professors and great teachers. So at least you should know that this knowledge is there. Then if you don't understand that, you know, then you don't need to study it, but you need to listen. So this is how these great sages, they did what the Guru did with them. Each of them had many disciples, and each of them gave something to them to study, to go deep into that and teach it to their own disciples. Through the system of Parampara, knowledge came until today. There is no such a thing as the philosophy that can be initiated by somebody who is not physically present. There is no such a thing. It never happened in our history. There are someone who say that yes, we can do it because Srila Prabhupada did not die. You cannot say that Prabhupada is dead. Our philosophy is that we are eternal. Oh, this is nonsense. This is nonsense. If you say that we are not qualified to be guru, what to speak about being qualified to change the most important law in our history, which is the Parampara. And the Krishna made this law, that knowledge should go by guru to shishya, by spiritual master to the disciple, and then the disciple become gurus, and they are disciple, etc., etc. There is no other system. There's no other system. Why? Because it is not sufficient to read books to learn. You can do this with mathematics or physics or chemistry. Yes, you buy a book and you learn. But you cannot do with spiritual knowledge, because spiritual knowledge is not enough. You need mercy. You need Guru Kripa. Otherwise, it just does not activate. Knowledge, it becomes dormant in your heart. And it's there, but it's just dormant. You need the Guru, mercy. So that's why the system is called Parampara, and this is how it worked for the last millions of years. From Brahma to our days, this is how it worked. Okay, so let's read a couple of more verses. And I know that Martin Rosalind sent me a few days ago some questions. I want to answer to them today, or if she prefers in Spanish after tomorrow. And I couldn't answer simply because these days have been really, really, really strong for me. And I was very, very busy in so many things. And so but if she wants, she can make the questions, I will answer today. But let's read the 24th and 25th, and then we go to the questions.
Okay. Thus, the great sage Vyasadeva, who was very kind to the ignorant masses, edited the Vedas so they might be assimilated by less intellectual men.
Yes. What's the point of teaching, just showing off that you are an intelligent man? I repeated this concept many, many times. I like to say it, you know. What's the point? There are so many teachers who teach and nobody understands. They don't understand themselves, you know, because they don't want to speak to teach. A teaching means that a person understands what you say. What's the point of saying something that nobody understands? So Vyasadeva was very merciful, and he was a rishi. Rishi means someone who can see. A rishi, the word rishi comes from the verbal root drish, which means to look. So he was able to see in the future. So he saw that we were not going to be very intelligent. So he wrote the scriptures so that we can understand. Okay. The kindness is the most important quality of a preacher. Okay, so let's go to the 25th.
Out of compassion, the great sage thought it wise that this would enable men to achieve the ultimate goal of life. Thus, he compiled the great historical narration called the Mahabharata for women,
Mahabharata.
for women, laborers, and friends of the twice born,
which is us. So we are not very intelligent. So if we read the Mahabharata, we understand a lot of philosophy, a lot. You know, we can start giving classes on the Mahabharata, and one life is not enough to explain everything there is to say. It's very, very beautiful. There is one chapter in the 18th chapter, or 18 books, because that's big, of the Mahabharata, which is called Shanti Parva. Shanti Parva is the biggest of all, the most vastest. And you can stay whole of your life just in that book, and you will know everything. If we want to create a society within the principle of Varnashrama, then you have to read the Shanti Parva. If you don't read the Shanti Parva, you will never know how to build a society, a Vaishnava, a Vedic society, because there Bhishmadeva tells us everything. All right, I think there are a few questions. If there are not, we can always go back to read the verses. But let's begin with Bhattin Rosalind, and then we.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I will be very pleased to have you answer the question that I sent you in this class, because it was related to the question that Bhakta Andy asked in the last class. But first I had a question about what you described in verse number 23 about how there is a parampara, and then my question is about what happens when the spreading out of the parampara. Then there are so many gurus, like say now there are 72 gurus after Srila Prabhupada, and after that maybe there's 700. How does that affect the parampara, which is only 32, or I forget, I saw it today, I read it today in one of your posts, but how does that affect the parampara?
Yes, the right diction is parampara and not parampara. So first of all, if you see if you do a chronological study, you see that not all the gurus are connected to the previous guru. Like from Jagannath Babaji to Baladeva Vidyabhushana, there are 70 years between the death of Baladeva Vidyabhushana and the birth of Jagannath Babaji. So this question was brought up and discussed many times among our great teachers. And the point is there are two different kinds of parampara. One is called Pancharatrika Parampara, and the other one is called, or Diksha Parampara, and the other one is called Bhagavata Parampara. The first type of parampara is strictly based on initiation. Okay? So the parampara is when you take initiation from the previous guru, then you enter into the parampara. The second parampara is not necessarily based on formal initiation, but by teachings. This can also be called the Shishya Parampara. You know, this is a term that I invented, the Shishya Parampara, which is based on the instructions. You know? So why there were only 32 gurus from Brahma to today? Of course not. There were millions and billions of gurus. But in that parampara, there are only the most important, only the ones who really left a footprint, that's correct? Footprints in history. They did something extraordinary. You know, like Madhvacharya or Lakshmipati Tirtha or Madhavendra Puri, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Rupa Goswami, of course, and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Baladeva Vidyabhushana was very important, very, very important. Jagannath Babaji discovered Mayapur. You know, Bhaktivinoda Thakur was the first one to preach in the West. You know, he had a son, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, who had a disciple who came to the West. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta took initiation from Gaura Das Babaji, who was a friend of Bhaktivinoda. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Gaura Das Babaji, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, who at that time was very young, they would meet almost every day, every night in Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur house in Mayapur and discuss Krishna consciousness. I have been in that house, and it's just a transcendental place. And can you imagine these three personalities and meeting and discussing what to do with us? So all of them, they're very extraordinary personalities, all the 32 parampara. And then now, not only Srila Prabhupada had many disciples, short of 5,000 disciples Prabhupada had. And, but all of them, they had thousands of disciples. And surely, each of them, each of these disciples, maybe they had hundreds of thousands of disciples, but they are not mentioned because it's not possible to mention everybody. Because maybe, first of all, it's just impossible to put everybody in a single article and a single book. And then the parampara, the Bhagavata parampara, is based on the concept that only the most important are mentioned, and their link is not necessarily based on formal initiation, but on how you say that in English? By preaching the same philosophy or being in agreement with the Siddhantas of what's that word? Philosophical compatibility. So that if you say something that is compatible with a guru who was living 200 or 300 years before, then you can be part of the parampara. But if you are initiated in the parampara, but you say something completely different, and then you are not part of the parampara. One example, the Ramanandis. The Ramanandis, there's a big history about the Ramanandis. Ramanandis are in the line of Madhvacharya, so they are our cousins. The same parampara, the same things, but there is some difference. Something that we have, they don't have it, they don't accept it. So because they don't accept something that is very important to us, they cannot be in our parampara. So there is going to be a next guru in our list after Srila Prabhupada. That's not necessary. Each disciple, they will put his own spiritual master in his own booklet, but not necessarily to print books and say Srila Prabhupada and then this Maharaj or the other Maharaj. That's not necessary. Also because the position of Srila Prabhupada is so extraordinarily important that he could be the only one, the 32nd guru forever, at least for 10,000 years, unless somebody exceptional will come and then we can put him. Maybe he's not going to be one Prabhupada disciple. Maybe in 200 years, someone extraordinary will come out and then he will be the 33rd.
Excellent. I understand much better now. Thank you, Maharaj. Would you like to deal with the other question now, or perhaps someone else has a question first?
Yeah, I want to spend just 1 or 2 minutes more talking about the Diksha Parampara or the Pancharatrika Parampara. This is something that cannot be spoken about in a couple of minutes, of course. But we, as a Gaudiya Vaishnava, as tonight my English is terrible, I know that. So as a Gaudiya Vaishnava, as someone coming out in this line, we are part of the Bhagavata Parampara, but we are also in the Diksha Parampara. There is another Parampara that not many people know. So you can find it in our library when we prove that we are also in the Diksha Parampara, that our spiritual master Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati took initiation in the Bhagavata Parampara, in the Diksha Parampara. So what is the importance of the two parampara? How important is Diksha or formal initiation compared to Shisha or instruction? Okay, well, this Diksha is another type of instruction because D comes from Divya Jnana, is the I would say when you put something short, the shortening of the word Divya Jnana. And Ksha comes from the Sanskrit verbal root, kshap. Kshapt means to impart. You find this also in our library. So when you take Diksha, you don't just change a name or you participate to your fight ceremony, but you receive knowledge. What kind of knowledge? Knowledge is through mantra. You receive the mantra. This is the main thing that happens in initiation. We have 2 initiations. We have 3 initiations, but the most important are 2. The first initiation, the Harinam mantra, where you receive from the Guru the Hare Krishna mantra. The second initiation, you receive the Gayatri mantra from the spiritual master. So when you recite the mantra, the knowledge comes out from your heart. You become purified to understand knowledge. Without the purification of the mantra, you will never understand really the philosophy. While Shisha, and then it's philosophy, is what we are doing right now. It's concept. I try to explain something, but the 2 things are complementary. One cannot be without the other one. If you chant, but you don't know what chanting is, then you chant, after a while you become tired of chanting because you don't understand why you are chanting. Of course, you are getting purified, But this is not the system, because if the system was only reciting mantra, then why Vyasadeva wrote so many books? Because reciting mantras and explaining philosophy, they had to be done both. On the other hand, if you understand philosophy, you study philosophy, you don't take initiation, then you will not understand philosophy. Or you will understand it, but you will be epidermic. I don't know if this word exists. It stays on the skin. It doesn't go inside your heart. So you got to be initiated, and you got to study under a bona fide spiritual master. This is, in short, a difference between formal Diksha and Shiksha. So Diksha Guru is also a Shiksha Guru, of course, it should be, but sometimes it's not. Like in our movement, we see people taking initiation from Guru they never met, or they heard him talk maybe 1 hour and they will never meet him again, they will never serve him again personally, And so ideally, the Diksha Guru should also be Shiksha Guru, but for some reason doesn't happen like that. So if someone, for any reason in the world, took or is going to take initiation from a person they will never meet again, then they should accept a Shiksha Guru also. And not just listening to class to someone who knows how to speak. That is not enough. A Diksha Guru is a guru. There's no difference between a Diksha Guru and Shiksha Guru. Both are gurus. You can listen to, there are thousands of classes on the internet. You can go on YouTube and you can listen to classes from wonderful devotees. They can teach you a lot, but guru is something different. So this is something about the difference between Diksha and Shiksha.
Thank you. I understand.
Okay, so let's go to the next.
O twice-born Brahmana, still his mind was not satisfied, although he engaged himself in working for the total welfare of all people.
What is this verse? It's 20.
26.
26, I read, Vyasadeva was not satisfied with himself. No. I made a mess. Yes, please read it again.
Okay. So 26. O twice-born Brahmana, still his mind was not satisfied, although he engaged himself in working for the total welfare of all people.
So when somebody writes the Vedas, the Purana, the Upaveda, the Vedanga, the Aranyaka, and the Upanishad, and the Puranas, and he's not satisfied. So this is extraordinary. This is unheard. He should be in ecstasy. He should be proud of himself. He should, be satisfied. But he felt that something was missing. And now we are going to, read the next verse.
Thus the sage, being dissatisfied at heart, at once began to reflect, because he knew the essence of religion, and he said within himself.
Yes. Okay. So I understand there could be some change. There are not many devotees present here, unfortunately. There could be some change from the next week. So maybe we can discuss that for a moment. Attendee?
Sorry, the connection is a little off for me. Well, am I continuing to read?
No, I understand that we have spoken that there could be from the next week a change of day.
Oh, yes. So you want, I can bring that up right now then.
Yeah, bring it up and then, yes.
Okay. Well, yeah, it would, yeah. So starting next week, well, it's just my work is requiring me to stay later on Thursdays. So it would just be difficult for me to actually like be present. So I could like start the call, like Cassandra and I could start the call, but like I wouldn't be on the screen or anything. And I would just be admitting devotees in until, I don't know, maybe 6:15 or 6:30. Then I could settle down and be in front of the screen. So I had a thought of we could do it that way, or if you all are okay with it, that we could push the class to Wednesday.
My problem is that English is not my birth language. So while in Italian I can speak in front of nobody, because I know that there will be people listening to me after. In English, it comes very difficult. Already, I am, since very few people come to this video conference live, maybe 6 or 7 each week, and some of them do not even show up in the face. So for me, it's not easy to speak in this condition. That's why I would say that that either we do it in a day where at least one, Andy comes always. About starting, that is not a problem because I can do it with my own, Zoom. So if you cannot start the conference, I can start with my own Zoom number. And so, but I need to see some faces because English for me sometimes. Because even here, when I was in Puerto Rico, my Spanish is not my mother language either, but I had a lot of opportunities to talk in Spanish. But here, in 1 year, I think I can count the people I met. Yeah, I met in 1 year, and how many people I had a conversation. I don't think that there are more than the fingers on my 2 hands. So my English didn't get any better since I came here in San Antonio. So I really need some people to show up.
Well, Bucky and Rosalind said she'd be able to make it, and Quinn, I don't know if you'd be able to make it on Wednesdays. I could also post it on the chat and see who else would be available on Wednesdays. But yeah, if everyone's okay with it, then we could just bring it or push it up a day.
Yeah, you can ask Martin Rosario also. She's always coming, So today she wrote me saying that she will not be able to attend because she had, some meeting or something. But yes. Same time. Yes, I think same time.
Yeah, it'd be the same time. Just instead of Thursdays, it'd be on Wednesdays.
Yes, yeah.
When it looked like you came off mute, I don't know if you Quinn, she came off mute and then.
Okay. I'm just not sure if you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Well, I just put into the chat that I'm also available on Wednesday if it's at the same time. So it's no big deal for me.
Okay. Yeah, it's a help because our video conferences are watched about 100 times, because in my website I can see how many people they watch the videos. So it's worth to continue. But I need some help. Let me see your face. Let me hear your voice. Let me, something. I don't know if you understand this psychological thing of mine, but I
No,
don't
it's
think
okay. I do understand. Yeah, I also I have a grandparent who's primarily French, so it's kind of I mostly understand her, and she does sometimes. Even still, she's been in Texas since 1973, and still sometimes she has me correct her English. So even so, it's I really do understand. So yeah,
Right.
definitely getting more people here, more interaction, so that way you
Yeah.
can develop your English is very important. So yes, I do understand.
Yeah, my English is primarily an English for reading. I spoken with so many people, of course, in my life, but it's not that daily I meet and discuss, I converse with people. I did it much more in Spanish. And so the only language is that I can converse by myself. I just turn on Zoom and talk. I don't care if nobody comes. It's my native language, which is Italian. Then I can do because I don't need to translate in my mind. You know, I just open the mouth and the words come out.
Yes, and since Spanish is very close to Italian, since they're both romantic languages.
Not so much. Not so
It's
much.
not?
Once you know it, you understand that they are close. But until you don't know it, you don't understand what they say.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I don't know, that's what happened to me when I came 2001 for the first time in a Spanish speaking country. Well, actually, I was in Spain in the 70s. But anyway, when I came to live in a Spanish speaking country, it took me at least 1 year to start talking in giving classes in Spanish. So they're similar, but not so much.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So if we have any other topic to discuss, I think we should have some topic. But you know, so why don't you, make me those questions.
Okay, Maharaj, I found the question in the chat because I did listen to the class last week that I did not attend. And after Bhakta Andy's question about the immutable soul, I ask, does the soul really remain the same or does it somehow develop? If a soul has a mind, does that mind learn? If a soul has a personality, does that personality develop?
Let's go one by one.
Okay.
So some example will help us to understand this concept better and quicker. So first of all, do a tree inside a seed. You know, a tree comes from a seed. Develop? Well, yes and no. Yes, because at the beginning it was not a tree, it was a seed, but inside the seed there was a tree. So the development is the coming out of his own nature that he always was. So potentially he never changed because he was a tree in the seed, potentially, and he was a tree when he came out from the seed. It's the same tree, but one is potential, the other one is developed. So in the same way, the soul, although at the present moment, it's like a spiritual spark. You know, it's a little spark. It's like a little battery inside our heart who gives to the material body the energy to move. It doesn't do anything. As a soul, doesn't do anything because we do nothing spiritual. We do everything material. But the energy of life, that's why it's called jiva. Jiva means the living. It gives the possibility to the body to move. But inside the soul, there is a body, a spiritual body. And this body, just like the seed and the tree, is potentially present inside the spiritual spark, but not developed. So it never changed. Right now, it's not developed. Then it will develop gradually until we get our own swarupa, Svarupa means the original transcendental body, when we'll be spiritually completely qualified. So, so the answer to your question is it doesn't change. No, it doesn't change. But that doesn't mean that right now we have the spiritual body that we will have when we'll be spiritually qualified. Is that clear?
I think so. Does this have to do with purifying ourselves so that we can find that soul that's inside of us, and rather than developing the soul, it's just getting rid of layers of obstacles?
Not really. Let's say the soul is a spiritual spark. It's not a body. We have not a spiritual body right now. So why we don't have a body? We don't have a body because this is inside the soul. So why we cannot think spiritually or understand spiritually, we cannot move? Because the soul is covered by Maya. The soul is pure, just like if you throw a diamond into the dirt, you don't see the diamond, but it's there. And when you take it, the diamond didn't become dirty. You just remove the dirt, which is now all around the stone. So the soul right now is just inside a capsule of material energy. And that's why we talk about purification. Chetodarpanamarjanam bhava mahadavakti nivapanam. This is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saying that just like a mirror, you don't see your image if the mirror is too dirty. You clean it, and then you will see yourself. So we had to purify that. But also to say that we look for the soul is not correct, because we are the soul. Who is the one who is looking for the soul? There is no another personality who has to look for the soul. It's the soul itself that is looking for himself. Okay, and is trying to get purified, to understand that he is a soul.
So, Maharaj, is that to say that once we find ourselves, our soul, that is when we no longer need to keep reincarnating?
Of course, reincarnation is the reincarnation is a situation when somebody has still desire to satisfy, material desire to satisfy. And if you have desire, then you continue taking the body. If you don't have material desires, only spiritual desire, you don't need another body, you need a spiritual body. Because this is the mechanism of material nature. Material nature look at you and say, oh, you have, you want this, okay, we'll give it to you. You don't want, you want the other thing, then I will give it to you. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your wisdom. Very good.
Okay, so what is the second question? That we arrive. Okay, this oh, this is. Oh, your question. This was your question. Okay, yeah. Because I'm reading your question. At some point, does the soul become ready? Okay, yes. You know, the principle of reincarnation is a very simple thing. Sometimes people do not understand that it's so simple. If the soul is eternal, where does it go when it has to leave this body? Which we call death. No? So when we die, let's use this word, although it's not really correct. But listen, when we die, if the soul doesn't die, where it goes? Somewhere else. This is the reincarnation. And what type of body we get, this depends from the desire you have at the moment of your death. Actually, saying your desires that you have the moment of death is not correct. or let's say is imperfect. Your state of consciousness, which, because if you know that you are going to die in 1 minute, you can think, okay, now I want to go to Krishna Loka. You want to go to Krishna. But your consciousness is not there because you have lived as a materialist the whole of your life. You're not ready to go to Krishna Loka because there was just something, the desire was something that what's the right word? Artificial. Okay, that you understood. Oh, now I'm dying, so I want to go to Krishna Loka. It doesn't work that way. Of course, Krishna appreciates that you are trying to, even if you are just trying to cheat him, which will not work. But Krishna will appreciate your trying. But what it decides, your body is your state of consciousness. And what is a state of consciousness? Is the result of what you did and what you were the whole of your life. That's why spiritual life is not a Sunday morning mass that we go to mass and then we come out of the church and we are nothing changed. You are the same because we think that Jesus Christ will love me because I went to mass. No, he wants you to change. He wants you to be a better spiritualist. So being religious is something that occupies the entirety of our life, not just Sunday morning. So that's why Krishna consciousness is a complete lifestyle, not just prayers, but it's something that covers the whole day, because we want to go away from this material world, and this take a little more than just going to the church for half hour. Okay, Bhakta.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hari Hari Bol.
I feel like Bhakti and Rosalind's question was, it was just something her question and then your explanation to it was just something that I had never really thought of, and I feel like had like a bomb going off in my mind. So my understanding then is, so when, like how we talk about with Sri Krishna, how his name and his form, like they're non-different because the soul is, or because he's completely spiritual, so he's non-different. So well, basically what it made me think of like is the jivas, so the living entities who are in, say, like the Vaikunthas or in Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan, those, so like say a cowherd boy who's there, his spiritual body is developed, like his body is non-different from him, so he is that body. Is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. There is no difference between the spiritual body and the spiritual soul. Just like there is no difference between the tree and the seed, that it was its original position when it was not a tree yet. So our soul will develop and become a spiritual body. So there is no difference between the body. While at the present moment, the difference between our body and the soul, not our soul, it's not correct to say our soul, because our means that we have the soul. We don't have the soul. We are the soul. It is very important to use the right verbs. The verb to be means I am. The verb to have means I have. I have this house. I'm not the house. Okay? I am the soul. I don't have a soul. I am the soul. You see, the difference is huge.
So then that brings me to the question of, upon us leaving, or maybe leaving isn't the best word, but I guess I would just say leaving then. So from us leaving the spiritual world, that body was like retracted, or that body was like What happened?
Oh, this is very complicated.
Oh, okay.
It is very complicated because it involves a lot of great acharya, they said, and then there is a bitter disagreements between the intelligent devotees of our movement, ISKCON, and you see, in the past, when great acharya disagreed, and they did, many times, it was just philosophy. Sometimes, when we disagree, we bring it to the material plane. I'm not criticizing anything or anybody. I'm just talking. Okay. We have sometimes someone disagrees with me, is inferior, is bad, is part of another philosophy, is better than good, then he should go out, then he should, we sometimes we are just very aggressive in our nature. In Kali Yuga, Kali Yuga means being aggressive. So in our movement, there are 2 or 3 philosophies, currents about this point that you make. And it doesn't matter what you say, there will be some who say that you are wrong, that you're this, that this is politics, you are against somebody else. So I just prefer not to talk. And there is a lot about at this point in our library, and you should go read, And of course, when we have our opinion. And why opinion? Because it's not good to say opinion, because we are supposed to say what the Shastra say or what the Guru say. But what about if the Guru say 2 different things or 2 opposite things? What do you do? So when he says something very different, opposite, apparently really different, or apparently different, then you have to, first of all, try to harmonize, if this is possible, but it takes a very cool head to harmonize. To do this, you have to be very exclusively interested to philosophy and not to politics. And this is sometimes quite difficult for us. This is our nature, fighting. Especially Americans, but not only Americans. Little bit everybody we love fight. A fight means I am right and you are wrong. So what about if you are both right? Oh no, this is not possible, because day and night, they're not the same thing. If you say one thing and I say another thing, I am right or I am wrong. This is not the case of philosophy. And I'm sure that during your studies, especially those who are listening to my classes during the years, like Martin Rosalind here, and realize that sometimes it's not black and white. Sometimes things are black and white at the same time.
Thank you. Well then, so it's okay. So going back, I guess, to like the verbiage, how we speak then. So it's not that, we have a soul, it's that I am a soul. And as a soul, I have desires and I act upon like desires. But so so then I think this has been so then, like, as a soul encapsulated within a material body and having, say, material desires, the soul is not really it's not touching the material desire. It's like you're using a material body to.
No, actually, the soul does not have material desires because it's spiritual. How can something spiritual have material desire? The soul has desires. This is a characteristic of the soul. The soul has a very big number of, very large number of characteristics. And one is to desire. The soul wishes. The problem is that when the soul characteristics comes out of the soul, it goes through the filter of false identification, which encircle the soul. Then the desire come out, and you think, I am the body. And then the desire at that point become material. But originally, desire was just a desire. So, and at that point, because you think to be a material body or desire, you look to satisfy the desire using what you have, which is your body. Then not only the desire that originally was spiritual by nature becomes material because you try to satisfy yourself with the material things. But desire is never material. Material is what you do with the desire. Understand? You take the spiritual desire, you try to satisfy it material. That point becomes material. Just like the mind or the intelligence. The mind is not material. The matter cannot have a mind. Matter is just matter. Just like this table, this machine, this house, they don't have a mind. Nothing material has a mind. The mind comes from the spirit soul, but becomes material. And then works like a material mechanism because it has been hidden by Maya, the false identification. False identification means I am the material body. Okay? Until this filter of material identification is there, then everything coming out of the soul will be transformed in something material. But again, not the intelligence. The mind is always spiritual. The intelligence is always spiritual. It's what you do with your mind that is material. Is that clear?
Yeah, that's more clear. There was like, it was bringing more questions, but I saw Cassandra put her hand up, so I do want to give her a chance to ask a question too.
Sure.
Your question might be related and it might answer mine anyways.
Right. I think Cassandra,
Thank you.
please.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. So can you explain how when Krishna comes to this material world and how he's not affected by the material nature?
Yes. Well, Srila Prabhupada makes a very nice example that when the head of a state, like a king or president, go to visit prison, he doesn't become a prisoner. He just go there to do something, some job, some work he has to do, but he's not a prisoner. You become a prisoner when you break the laws. Krishna never breaks the laws. So when he comes in this material world, he's always transcendental. He actually brings with himself the whole spiritual world. Just like Vrindavan, if you go to India, when you will go to India, you would see Vrindavan looks like a normal, not so normal, because there are thousands of temples. You cannot walk 5 minutes without meeting a temple. But it is a spiritual world, although it looks like material world. Just like the deities on the altar, they look like statues, but they're not statues. And Vrindavan looks like a normal Indian town, but it's not a normal Indian town. So Krishna comes and does what he wants to do in this material world, but matter never even touches him.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Very well. Okay, so we are almost finished. If there is something else, if not, I want to spend a few minutes.
Well, sorry.
Yeah, go on. We have some 10 minutes, maybe.
Okay. So going back to the material filter and how, like, we act upon, like, our desires and everything are filtered. So that just brought up how Srila Prabhupada would talk about the material world, the material world being a perverted reflection of, like, the spiritual world. So what does perverted mean in that context then?
Yeah, perverted means that it looks like the original, but it's not the same qualities. So it's perverted. Just like a pervert. He looks like a man, but he doesn't act as a man. He acts as a beast. Okay? These horrible people going around, taking children. They look like men, but they are not men. Because men, they don't behave in this way. So in the same way, when you see the spiritual world, we cannot see right now, but when you see it in the scripture and you read the description of the spiritual world, and then you see the material world, they look like the same. Just like in Vrindavan, there is a hill, Govardhan Hill, and there is the river, the Yamuna River, and there is the Vrindavan, like a town, and there are the Gopas. There are coward boys and girls in India, everywhere, even in Texas, there are coward boys and girls. And everything, there are flutes, there are stones, there are trees. Everything looks exactly the same. But they are not the same, because one is spiritual and the other one is perverted. Because it's just a material representation. Srila Prabhupada does in the scripture also. They do a very nice example to explain this principle. If you have a lake with very calm waters, and there is one tree on the bank of this lake, then you see the reflection of the tree. And if the water are very still, there is no difference between the tree reflected and the tree, the real tree. Okay? But what is the difference? In the real tree, you can take the fruit. In the false tree, you get wet, because there is no tree. It's just a form. So in this material world, there are the forms, but there is not the substance of the spiritual world. It's different. You get wet in this material world. You get contaminated. Okay? I think I like this example very much, because it's very clear to see what it looks real and what is real. Of course, even a reflection is real. It's a real reflection. You cannot say that a reflection does not exist. Of course it exists, but it is a reflection. Does not have the same qualities of the real thing that caused the reflection. Because again, the fruit, it is in the reality, but it's not. So if you try to get from the material world what you can get in the spiritual world, you will not get it. But you are convinced that you will, because yes, there are girls in the material world, there are girls in the spiritual world, Krishna is happy with his girlfriends, and I can be happy. It doesn't work that way, because it's a perverted reflection. There is no substance in the material world. You try to be happy, you'll never be happy. because there is no happiness in these things. It's just a perverted reflection of the real thing in the material world. Just like in the spiritual world, people is eternal. In the material world, it's not. So we get married and we have girlfriends or boys, if we are women, and we get jobs and we eat and we sleep and we get some, well, just like the same things happen in the spiritual world. But we will never be happy, and everyone you know will die. And you will be left alone if you don't die before them. And you will think, where is my wife? Where is my son? Where is my father? Where is my... Everybody's gone. I'm alone. I'm 60 years old. Of course, I got a lot of time for you to become 60, but you will become 60. And then, you know, this, in old age, you realize these things more easily. Well, when one is young, there's a lot of difficulty because it's not, you don't, it takes a lot of intelligence to project something that you cannot experience fully now when you are young. But when you see it in your life, then it becomes very, very clear. When you become 60, 70, 80, you cannot run as you did. Maybe you were an athlete when you were young, and now you can't do anything because your body. Then the reality of the reality of what the material world is becomes clear. That this material world is just a perfect reflection of the spiritual world. Spiritual world, everything is real, gives you happiness, never dies, never gets sick, never. In the material world, it's exactly the opposite. It looks the same, but it's not.
Thank you. I feel like your words are very crystal clear, and they're cleansing my mind right now. Right? So I pray that they can stay with me, because I know following this class, it would just be a wave of Maya hitting me again and everything. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I think we should finish now, and I recommend to please visit often my website. It's here, isvara.org. I have this website from the 90s. You may believe it or not. I was one of the first devotees, one of the first men to have an internet website, you know. Maybe I can tell you why. I was in the 80s. I don't know if this story interests you anyway. I will tell you the last 2 minutes that we have. In the 80s, I was in charge of researching how we can protect ourselves from a nuclear war. That was in the beginning of the 80s. So in our movement, we were making plans, because some of our leaders, they were convinced that we were about to be in a nuclear war. So in Italy, I was the man in charge. And at that time, I was temple president in Sicily, South Italy. And in Sicily, there is a huge American nuclear base, which is called Sigonella. And since I was preaching in Sicily, many military men, Italians and Americans, were coming to the temple. So I got one of them, and I started talking. There was, I think, 82 or something like that. Yeah, 81, 82. And he explained me everything about nuclear bombs, how they are, what they do. Of course, he didn't tell me everything because there was some military secret, etc. But he told me quite a lot. And he told me something about nobody heard about, something called Arpanet. Arpanet is internet. Before called internet, it was called Arpanet, because it was a military project. If a nuclear war happened, how can we stay in contact? So they created base like a net. That's why it's called net. because there are different points. If someone destroys one point, we can arrive through another way to the same point. So we can discuss, we can do our plans, our problem for our war. It was a military project. Then, since people even allow me a joke, even America, they can become realistic. They understood there was not going to be any nuclear war. They said, okay, so now what do we do with this invention, with this Arpanet? And they say, okay, let's do it. Let's use it for the university. And Arpanet became a university project to put in contact all the universities. And there was basically 86, 87. It was only a university project. And then at the beginning of the 90s, it became international. That's why it's called the internet. Internet means internet. Before it was military, after it became university, and then it became for everybody. It was called as internet. Since I never abandoned discussing with the military friends, etc., I came to know that now everybody could use. Before I couldn't, I was fascinated by the idea that I can talk with Chinese, Australian, being seated anywhere I would like to be. And then about 95, 96, it became possible to have our own website. And our movement, ISKCON, opened the first website, I think in 95 or 96. There was a Swedish BBT, and I was the second, 96. And I opened Ishvara .it, Italy, at that time there was, who became after a few years Ishvara.org, because I didn't want to preach only in Italian, but also in other languages. So this is how internet came to be, and it is a great blessing that Krishna gave us, because now we can do things that I mean, in the 80s, for me, to think that one day I could be in an international video conference, internet works. I write, I put it on a server or another computer, and you go there and you read what I sent to the. That's internet. But then I became spoken internet. They became video internet. Now we can have a video conference. It doesn't matter. Maybe I'm not even in San Antonio anymore. Maybe I'm already away. You don't know. Actually, you won't care where I am, because it will be the same. Of course, if some of you want to see my body, want to see me physically, you may like it to see. But one thing, in many years of preaching, no one devotee ever asked me where I am, where I was. Nobody, because nobody. So this is to conclude today's. This is a great possibility that Krishna gave us to utilize the technology for having satsanga, sadhusanga, for meeting, discussing about Krishna, doing so many things. And in the future, other projects will come, and you be sure that we will be there to utilize them. Like I had one project of recreating Vrindavana on internet. You walk, and there is the temple, measuring exactly the meters and the kilometers that separates the two. You click and you see the video, so you see the live video, what's happening in that place, and you click and you listen to a class regarding that place, and then you see the pictures. And then you see, I'm fascinated about giving Vrindavan to people. And I have also other projects. That depends very much also from you, because I need help. I can do it by myself. One day we will have, not only to see each other in video, but we will be physically present in a temple room where we can chant with our. That's I love very much this technology, and I encourage you to have the necessary to utilize the technology for Krishna consciousness. Okay, so thank you very much. And our appointment, so it is decided that it will be, or you first try to talk to the other devotees?
Well, just from Bhakti and Rosalind is consistently here and Quinn is consistently here. So I feel like it'll be Wednesdays. So I can just post that we'll be moving the class to Wednesday.
Yeah, like Dhananjaya was here, but he left before
Yes.
we spoke. So put it in all the groups that we have. Also, you don't.
What about Bhakti and Rosario?
Yeah,
yes.
If you put this news on my group, for instance, there are almost 100 people there, and you put it on my website and you put it on the on Facebook, that everybody will know that next week will be Wednesday and not Thursday.
Yes, I can do that.
Okay, so thank you very much. See you next Wednesday. Hari Bol, all glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna. Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna.
Haribol. Thank you.
Thank you very much.